The applause rose like a storm, warm, thunderous, vibrating through the velvet seats of the lyric hall. Closing night. My masterpiece. My triumph. And yet, as I stood in the glow of the spotlight, soaking in the adoration of hundreds, a strange stillness crept under my ribs. A wrongness that didn't belong to success. I was Seraphina Vale, playwright, visionary, the woman whose words had carried audiences across continents. Tonight should have been pure exhilaration. Instead, something fragile inside me trembled. Not fear, not exhaustion, but the whisper of an ending. Alistair stood at the front of the audience, applauding harder than anyone, his smile dazzling enough to outshine the house lights. Perfect cheekbones, tailored suit, a grin that could sell lies as easily as tickets. My husband, my producer, my greatest supporter, or so I had once believed. But now his applause rang hollow, almost mocking. And when the curtain finally fell, the last thing I saw through the narrowing crack of stage drape was his eyes, sharp, triumphant, hungry. Backstage, chaos bloomed in every corner. Actors crying, stagehands cheering, tech crews dismantling set pieces with exhausted joy. People pressed in around me with flowers, praise, congratulations. But the wrongness in my body deepened, spreading like ink in water. I tried to breathe. The air felt thick. Alistair slipped through the crowd like he owned the shadows. "My star," he murmured, sliding an arm around my waist. "Let me steal you for a moment." The familiar warmth of his hand should have comforted me. Tonight, it chilled me. He guided me into my private dressing room, closing the door with a soft click that felt too final. The room spun faintly. Perfume bottles blurred. The mirror seemed to ripple. "You are extraordinary," he said, standing behind me, his reflection crisp while mine flickered like a dying light. "Your best work. Perhaps your last masterpiece." My fingers curled around the edge of the vanity. "Alistair, something's wrong." "Yes," he said simply. "It's working." I turned, confusion hardening into clarity all at once. The room dimmed, but his voice cut through cleanly, calmly, too calmly. "It's an elegant drug," he explained as if discussing prop design, not my unraveling senses. "Fast, painless, virtually undetectable. The stress of the production will be blamed. Everyone already knows you've been exhausted." The world tilted. Not violently, more like a stage set being silently removed, piece by piece. "Why?" My voice came out distant, like it belonged to someone in the audience instead of me. He stepped closer, his expression softening into something almost tender, as if comforting a child. "Seraphina, you're a genius. A real one. And that's the problem." He touched my cheek lightly, as though admiring a sculpture. "You overshadow everything I do. Every production I attempt, every idea I pitch. Everyone asks what you think. They want your voice, not mine. Your plays. Your characters." His eyes hardened. "I won't spend the rest of my life being compared to you." A quiet numbness spread through my limbs. I felt detached from my own body, but my mind still burned, sharp, aware, horrified. "So you want my plays?" I whispered. "My catalog. My rights." "I want my freedom," he said. "And I can't have it while living in the echo of your brilliance." His smile was small, almost weary. "Once you're gone, everything you've written is mine to steward. I'll produce the works I actually care about. Your unfinished scripts will become collaborative visions." The room drifted in and out of focus. Sound softened. Light blurred. But inside me, something fierce rose. Clarity, rage, and a strange, blazing calm. "You always wanted applause," I murmured, gripping the last threads of consciousness. "But you never understood the work. You want a spotlight without earning the stage." His expression flickered. Annoyance? Fear? No, irritation. "You and Gareth always said that. Purists, both of you." He laughed lightly. "He'll be devastated, of course. But he'll recover. He always adapts." Gareth. Alistair's lifelong best friend. The only person who had ever looked at my work with sincere respect. The only one who had ever challenged Alistair's ego. The one man whose approval Alistair secretly craved and never received. My mind held onto that name like a lifeline. Gareth. If I had another chance, if fate would let me rewrite the script, Gareth would be the key. The edges of the room darkened, folding inward like closing curtains. My heartbeat slowed, a quiet drum fading behind velvet. Alistair knelt beside me, his voice almost affectionate. You should be proud. The world will remember you.
No.
Not like this. I had built my life on stories, worlds where truth triumphed, where masks fell, where every character eventually faced the consequences of their choices. If I somehow returned, if destiny granted me one impossible encore, I would rewrite everything. Not just my career, not just my legacy, but the entire stage Alistair stood on. As the last seconds slipped from me, I made a silent promise, not born of fear but of fierce purpose. I will return. I will rebuild my story. And I will tear down yours, Alistair, scene by scene, spotlight by spotlight. Darkness embraced me gently, like falling into velvet. My final thought was not of death, but of war. A war written in ink, truth, and a heart finally free of illusions. The first thing I felt was cold. Not the heavy, settling cold of death, but the sharp bite of backstage air, dusty, stale, tinged with sawdust and fading notes of cheap perfume. My eyes flew open. Instead of a sleek dressing room at the Lyric Hall, I stared up at a cracked wooden ceiling half covered with taped cue cards and old prop lists. My heart kicked hard, alive and wild.
Alive.
I sat up so fast the world tilted. The floor beneath me was rough, splintered stage wood. Someone's discarded Shakespeare script lay beside my knee. My clothes were not the elegant closing nightgown I died in, but black leggings and an oversized theater department hoodie. A familiar scent, grease paint, sweat, and student ambition, hit me with a punch of recognition. This was the University Theater. The old Springwell Arts Building. The place where everything had begun. No, I whispered, touching my face, my hair. My hands trembled, young hands. No rings, no scars. My body felt lighter, faster, 19 again. My pulse thundered. The date flashed across an old corkboard calendar hanging crookedly on the wall. October 22nd, 2008. 21 days before I first met Alistair. More than a year before my debut play. A lifetime before the poison. A hysterical laugh bubbled in my chest, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't madness. It wasn't a dream. It was a second chance. I stood, wobbling a little, absorbing the chaos of the backstage space. Students rushed past carrying props. Distantly, an acting professor barked orders. But all I could hear was Alistair's final confession echoing in my skull. I can't spend my life in the echo of your brilliance. And more importantly, you and Gareth always said that. Gareth. Gareth Vance. Alistair's childhood best friend. My future technical director. The one person who saw through Alistair's theatrics long before I did. If I wanted to dismantle Alistair's rise, I needed Gareth now, not as an ally Alistair thought he controlled, but as my partner. Someone who valued precision over ego, truth over applause. I left the backstage chaos and climbed the narrow ladder up to the old lighting booth. It was darker here, quieter, humming with equipment older than most faculty. And there he was. Gareth Vance, 19, jaw tense in concentration, one hand adjusting a dimmer knob while the other scribbled notes with obsessive precision. Dark hair falling into his eyes, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Every movement economical, focused. He was exactly as I remembered, except younger, sharper, untouched by years of loyalty to a man who didn't deserve it. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. I needed to approach him carefully. He hated nonsense, despised drama, mistrusted charm. He respected three things: evidence, honesty, and technical integrity. So I gave him what he valued most. You're about to have a catastrophic set failure, I said softly from the doorway. He stiffened instantly, turning. His eyes were cold, assessing, not unkind but unapologetically analytical. What? I moved closer, pointing to the design blueprint pinned on his corkboard. Here. My fingertip traced the flaw I remembered from years later, Alistair's first student production. A structural truss that was improperly reinforced. In the original timeline, the set didn't collapse entirely, but the near disaster had been humiliating for Gareth, and Alistair had blamed him publicly. If you don't reinforce this, I continued, the truss will give out during the Act 2 transition. When the rotating platform shifts, the load distribution won't hold. Gareth stared at me like I'd just spoken prophecy. His eyes narrowed.
Who told you that?
No one. He stepped closer. Then how do you know? Because I lived it. Because I died for knowing too much too late. I study patterns, I said carefully, truth twisted into a shape he could accept. People.
Designs.
I see what others overlook. His gaze pinned me. For a moment, I feared he'd dismiss me. But Gareth Vance didn't reject truth, only ego. Only carelessness. So you're saying Alistair screwed up? He murmured. I'm saying he cut corners, I corrected gently. And you'll be the one blamed unless you fix it. Silence. Then, slowly, Gareth nodded. A tiny motion, but monumental. Show me. I stepped beside him at the work table. Our shoulders brushed lightly, barely contact, but warm, grounding. Together we remeasured the structure, recalculated load, sketched reinforcement angles.
His voice was low.
Why help me? You barely know me. I looked at him, really looked. The honesty in his expression. The steadiness. The quiet strength that had always outshined Alistair's theatrics. You care about the work, I said softly. That's rare. And valuable. He held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. Something unspoken flickered between us. Curiosity, maybe trust, maybe something gentler forming in the dark edges of possibility. I'll fix the truss, he said. And thank you. I exhaled, tension releasing from my shoulders. Gareth, I added quietly before leaving, this won't be the only mistake Alistair makes. He'll make more. And I'll need your help to stop him. His brows knit. You're planning something?
No.
I smiled faintly. I'm correcting something. And for the first time since my death, I felt the stage shift in my favor. The next 2 weeks unfolded like a script I had already read, but this time, I was the one holding the pen. News of the miraculous save on Alistair's student production spread across the drama department. The set that should have collapsed instead held perfectly, thanks to Gareth's reinforced design. Alistair, embarrassed by how close he'd come to disaster, took the credit without shame. Gareth didn't protest. He simply watched from the wings, jaw tight, expression unreadable. But he knew, and I knew, and that silent understanding bound us tighter than any friendship Alistair pretended to offer. Most evenings after classes, I climbed the steps to the lighting booth where Gareth worked alone. He had the kind of mind that thrived in solitude. He didn't chase attention. He didn't need applause. He only needed precision, lines straight, circuits smooth, structures reliable. But each night, when I arrived, he made space for me. Not with words, but with a chair pulled a little closer. A dimmer panel cleared. A cup of lukewarm tea placed silently on the table. We fell into an unspoken rhythm. He handled the technical logic, I handled the creative patterns. Where he measured angles, I predicted failures before they happened. Together, we strengthened every weak point in Alistair's upcoming work, ensuring he looked competent, but never brilliant. It wasn't sabotage. Not yet. It was strategy. One evening, as we recalibrated the lighting grid, Gareth spoke without lifting his eyes. You know, he said, adjusting a cable with slow, deliberate care. Most people who want to help do it loudly. Dramatically. You just fix things. I don't like noise, I replied, matching his tone. Noise hides truth. He looked at me then, really looked like he was examining the grain of a rare piece of wood. His eyes softened, the faintest hint of warmth breaking through his usual guarded calm. You're different, he said. different in a way that makes sense. The words sat in my chest like a small, bright flame. We worked late that night, past midnight. The theater was quiet, every seat dark, the echoes of rehearsals fading like ghosts. I climbed onto the catwalk to help adjust an overhead gel, while Gareth stayed below, monitoring the console.
Try it now, he called.
I shifted the gel. The stage washed in soft amber light. It's perfect, he said. No, I replied, smiling slightly. It's balance. A soft huff of laughter drifted up to me. Rare, genuine. When I climbed down the ladder, my foot slipped on a loose rung. Gareth moved instinctively, catching my arm before I could fall. His hands were steady, firm, grounding. You all right? He asked, brow furrowed. I'm fine, I said, though my pulse was embarrassingly quick. He didn't release me right away. Not out of romance, not the dramatic kind I used to write, but out of instinctive protectiveness. And in that small moment, the warmth of his hand on my sleeve felt stronger than any applause I'd ever received. For the first time, I wondered what my life would have been like if I'd seen Gareth, not Alistair, first. The next day, Alistair cornered me in the courtyard. Seraphina, I've been looking all over for you. His tone dripped charm. Manufactured, polished, hollow. I heard about your involvement in the set fix. He was fishing. He could sense his spotlight shifting. I pointed out a problem, I said neutrally. Nothing more. But why waste your talent with Gareth? He pressed. He's a technician. You're a creator. I could give you opportunities he can't even imagine. Opportunities. Like theft. Like manipulation. Like poison. I smiled gently, coating my voice in polite distance. I'm not interested in shortcuts, Alistair. His smile twitched. He didn't like hearing that. Not from me. Not from anyone. Think about it, he said tightly. I'm the one who can get you on real stages. I nodded, appearing thoughtful as he left. But inside, steel formed. He had no idea his stage was already cracking beneath him. That evening, Gareth and I reviewed Alistair's new proposal for a large-scale student festival. It was ambitious, expensive, and structurally impossible. He'll bankrupt the department with this, Gareth muttered, flipping through the pages. And then somehow blame everyone but himself. That's the pattern, I said softly. He looked at me over the stack of papers. Pattern. I took a slow breath. I couldn't tell him everything. Not yet. But I could give him pieces. Alistair doesn't build things, I said.
He performs them.
And performances collapse when no one is watching the foundations. Gareth's eyes softened again, a look that said he was beginning to understand not just the problem, but me. We can stop him, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a quiet promise. We will, I replied. For a long moment, we simply held each other's gaze. The stage was dark, but the space between us felt lit, charged with something warm and fragile. Not love.
Not yet.
But something beginning. Something honest. Gareth leaned back, exhaling. You know, I've never had someone who worked beside me like this. I've never had someone who listened, I admitted. A small smile touched his lips, rare, genuine, and meant only for me. In that dim, dusty booth, surrounded by circuits and scripts and the faint hum of old lights, we forged the beginning of an alliance far stronger than Alistair could ever command. And deep down I knew, this partnership wasn't just tactical. It was personal. And it was only the opening act. The first hint of unease arrived quietly, like the tremor before a storm. It was in the way Alistair lingered longer at rehearsals, observing more carefully, his sharp eyes darting over the set and the students with a predatory precision I had not seen before. He had realized something, but not what yet. I felt it in my chest, a pulse of both anticipation and caution. We were no longer just correcting his errors, we were steering him, guiding him into a pattern he couldn't control. And he could sense it. Gareth noticed it too. I watched him beneath the low stage lights, adjusting a rigged pulley system, shoulders tense. His calm facade was slipping, just slightly, into something warmer, something protective, especially around me. I try not to notice how my pulse quickened when our hands brushed over the same piece of hardware, or how I caught myself lingering just a second longer near him. "I've noticed him," I said quietly, leaning against the lighting desk. "Alistair. He's watching more closely." Gareth's jaw tightened. "I thought we were still invisible to him." "Not anymore," I said. "The foundation is too solid. He's seeing it, and it's terrifying him." He glanced at me, eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite name. Concern? Admiration? Perhaps both. "Good," he said finally. "Terrified people are predictable." We continued working late into the evening, running calculations for set supports and rehearsing the cues for the upcoming student showcase. Every move we made, every adjustment, was like a chess piece carefully placed. But amidst the schematics and measuring tape, a subtle warmth lingered between us, unspoken yet palpable. I found myself noticing the curve of his smile when he caught a misaligned cable, the slight laugh that escaped when I teased him about his obsession with symmetry. The air between us carried the weight of countless shared victories. He wasn't Alistair, he didn't demand the spotlight. He built it, meticulously, with integrity. And I had begun to realize how intoxicating it was to work beside someone who appreciated not just the brilliance of the work, but the person creating it. It was during a rehearsal break that the tension finally surfaced in words. Alistair stormed into the empty theater, sharply clapping his hands to demand attention. "Seraphina." His voice cut through the echo of the empty hall. "I want a word." I stiffened instinctively, and Gareth's presence beside me was grounding. He didn't intervene. His calm, measured gaze told Alistair silently that he was not to intimidate me. I met Alistair's eyes squarely, letting him feel the firmness I had spent weeks cultivating. "What is this?" Alistair demanded, motioning vaguely at the stage, at the lights, at the flawless execution of the rehearsal. "Everything is perfect. Too perfect." I held my ground. "Perfection isn't always a bad thing," I said softly. "Sometimes it's just preparation." He scowled, as if the words themselves were a personal attack. "You've changed," he said. "I don't know who is guiding you now. And I intend to find out." Gareth's hand brushed mine subtly as he adjusted a light, grounding me. I felt the warmth ripple through me, not like a declaration, but like a promise of solidarity. He didn't need to speak. The touch said, "I've got you. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Alistair's glare lingered, sharp and cutting, but he turned abruptly and left, clearly frustrated. "Is he going to stop?" Gareth asked, exhaling as if the tension had left his body but not the room. "Not while he thinks he can control us," I said, smiling faintly. "But that's fine. Let him watch. Let him squirm. He doesn't understand what's being built here." Gareth glanced at me, those piercing eyes softened by the dim light. "You're fearless," he said quietly, almost reverently. "Even when he's staring right through you." I felt a flutter of something in my chest, something I hadn't named. Gratitude? Connection? Something warmer, gentler. The kind of tension that lingers just out of reach, waiting for the right moment to become more. "Not fearless," I admitted, leaning closer, just enough for him to catch it. "Careful, calculated, and determined." Our fingers brushed again over the edge of the lighting console, and this time, neither of us pulled away. I could sense the shift, the subtle acknowledgement that we were no longer just partners in strategy. There was trust, yes, but there was also something quietly blooming, delicate, tethered to the long nights and shared victories. The rehearsal continued, Alistair's shadow looming outside the doors, unaware that every subtle move we made only strengthened our bond and exposed the cracks in his control. And in that dim theater, surrounded by cables, dust, and stage lights, I realized something. Gareth wasn't just an ally. He was the one who anchored me, the one I could trust when every other spotlight felt like a trap. And, perhaps, the one who would help me finally rewrite the script of my life. The first showcase arrived like a wave, full of energy, noise, and expectation. The university theater was packed, the air thick with excitement and the faint scent of old wood and dust. I stood in the wings, watching the chaos with practiced detachment, my pulse steady but alert. Gareth was already at the control panel, adjusting lights, cues, and sound with his usual precision. I leaned close, offering a silent nod, and he returned a small, almost imperceptible smile. That smile, it grounded me. It reminded me that we were in control, even when Alistair believed he was. From the audience, I could see Alistair, seated in the front row with a smug expression that made my skin crawl. He had no idea that every flaw he thought would embarrass Gareth had already been corrected weeks ago. Every cue, every set piece, every light and sound was running like clockwork, thanks to our months of planning. But Alistair's presence was more than just an audience. It was a threat, a constant reminder that the past I had escaped could still reach for me. And yet, as I watched Gareth, calm and focused, I realized I had allies I could trust. More than just allies, actually. The performance began. Actors moved with confidence, lines delivered flawlessly. The lighting shifted in perfect harmony with the story, the set pieces rotating without a hitch. Every time a scene transitioned smoothly, I felt a quiet victory ripple through me. Alistair's jaw tightened with each applause that greeted the actors, unearned in his eyes, but deserved by those who had worked tirelessly behind the scenes. During the intermission, Gareth approached me with a clipboard in hand. His dark eyes scanned the audience before settling on me. "Everything's holding," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Your foresight that works." I smiled softly. "We work together. It's not just me." He hesitated, as if debating whether to say more. Then his hand brushed mine briefly over the clipboard, a small, grounding touch. My heart skipped, even though the gesture was understated, almost professional. Yet the warmth lingered, stretching between us like a thread waiting to be pulled taut. Alistair was seething. By the second act, I noticed it, the tension radiating from him, fingers curling around the program, his face pale with frustration. He had underestimated not only Gareth but me. He hadn't predicted that someone would see beyond his charm, beyond his theatrics, and plan for every eventuality. When the final scene arrived, I stood near the wings, watching the actors take their bows. Applause roared. The audience rose to their feet. And in that moment, I realized something important. Alistair had no power here. He could sit in the front row and try to intimidate, but the stage and this triumph was ours. Gareth approached me as the applause faded. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it." I looked at him, our fingers brushing again, lingering a little longer this time. "We make a good team," I replied. "Yes," he murmured, voice low, eyes locked with mine. There was an unspoken understanding here, not just about the victory, but about everything that had led us to this moment. Months of planning, nights spent in quiet calculation, moments of silent connection, and now, the weight of possibility hung between us, subtle but undeniable. Alistair stormed backstage after the curtain call, his face flushed with anger. "Seraphina, this isn't over." His voice cracked with frustration. "You think this little success changes anything?" I turned, calm and deliberate, letting his words hang in the air. "It does," I said firmly, "because it proves something you've never understood. True artistry, real integrity, and a foundation built on honesty will always outshine manipulation." Gareth stepped closer, almost protectively, his presence a solid shield I didn't even realize I needed. Alistair's glare swept over both of us, realizing he was not alone in confronting me. His jaw tightened, and he left without another word, the sound of the door slamming echoing through the empty theater. I exhaled, tension leaving me slowly. "He won't stop," I said quietly, almost to myself. Gareth's hand found mine again, this time intentionally, and he gave it a gentle squeeze. "Then we keep building. And we keep winning." Something shifted in that small gesture, a spark, faint but real, connecting us beyond work, beyond strategy. It was not the full bloom of romance yet, but it was something stronger. Trust, closeness, and the first quiet recognition that what we were building together extended beyond sets and lights. I smiled, letting myself savor it, just for a moment. The stage was ours. The victory was ours. And perhaps, in time, the connection we shared could be, too. As the theater emptied and the lights dimmed, I realized one truth with clarity. Alistair could never own the stage, the work, or me. Not now, not ever. Gareth and I would write our own script, and maybe, slowly, fill it with something even more powerful than triumph, the promise of a future we could trust in together. The morning air was thick with the smell of rain on concrete, though the sky remained stubbornly overcast. I felt it before I saw it. The creeping unease that comes when a storm approaches, quiet at first, then swelling with inevitability. Alistair was making his move. The call came at the studio. His voice was smooth, falsely polite, but the underlying menace cut through every word. "Seraphina," he said, the syllable sharp as glass. "You think your little alliance shields you? I have ways of reclaiming what's mine." The showcase was only the beginning. I hung up slowly, letting the dial tone resonate like a warning in my mind. Gareth entered moments later, carrying sketches and measurements for the next production. He caught the tension immediately, eyes narrowing. "What happened?" Alistair's name slipped from my lips, and I felt a weight settle over us both. "He's planning something," I said. "Something calculated. He wants control back." Gareth moved closer, the familiar protective energy surrounding me. "Then we plan, too. We anticipate. Nothing slips through our fingers." Hours were spent combing through every set design, every structural point, every logistical detail. I realized once more how effortlessly we worked together, the combination of my foresight and his meticulous attention to detail creating a network of safeguards Alistair could never anticipate. Yet amidst the technical discussion, I felt the subtle tension in the space between us grow. It was in the way Gareth leaned close to check a measurement, the brush of his fingers against mine, the faint, unspoken acknowledgement in his gaze. My pulse quickened. It was a tension neither of us named aloud, but both felt. When the afternoon rehearsal began, Alistair appeared unexpectedly in the wings, feigning casual interest. I caught the slight smirk playing at his lips, a predator pleased with his stalking. But we were ready. Every contingency had been anticipated, every potential sabotage addressed. He tried to intervene, whispering instructions to actors and crew, attempting to assert control. I kept my eyes on him, remaining calm, letting Gareth signal minor adjustments that nullified every one of Alistair's subtle manipulations. The audience, a small preview group, noticed nothing, but I could feel Alistair's frustration growing with every flawless cue. During a scene change, I found myself side by side with Gareth, hands brushing as we adjusted a rig. His gaze caught mine, dark and intense, and the air between us seemed to pulse with something unspoken. "He won't intimidate you," he murmured, voice low. "Not while I'm here." I swallowed, feeling the warmth of his proximity settle in my chest. "I know," I whispered, letting myself linger in the moment longer than strictly necessary. The theater lights cast a halo around him, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of us, standing against the threat of Alistair's schemes. Alistair's frustration finally reached a peak. He stormed into the empty hall between scenes, voice sharp and cutting. "Seraphina, I warned you. You cannot outmaneuver me forever." I turned calmly, letting his words hit the air without shaking me. Gareth moved instinctively closer, a steady presence. "We've already outmaneuvered you," I said, voice firm. "Every step you've taken has been anticipated. You underestimate us." Alistair's glare swept over both of us, and I felt the thrill of triumph, the quiet, intoxicating knowledge that he could not break us, could not intimidate us. His jaw clenched, and he left abruptly, leaving the empty theater echoing with the sound of his fury. Gareth's hand found mine again, this time holding it with deliberate intent. "You did well," he murmured, voice low. "We did well. And His words trailed, but his gaze lingered. The tension between us, carefully held back for months, was finally surfacing in a quiet acknowledgement. I squeezed his hand gently, the warmth of his touch grounding me. "Yes," I said softly.
We did.
Together. The rehearsal continued, the actors unaware of the storm we had weathered, the subtle victories hidden behind stagecraft and expertise. But I knew the truth. Alistair had struck, and he had failed. Our alliance, precise and unbreakable, had held firm. And somewhere beneath the tension and adrenaline, a spark had ignited between Gareth and me, quiet but undeniable, threading itself into the fabric of our partnership. As the night ended and the theater emptied, I glanced at Gareth, our hands still linked. I realized that whatever came next, whatever Alistair tried, I was not alone. The alliance was more than strategy now, it was trust, intimacy, and something that felt like the beginning of us. And I knew, without doubt, that whatever stage Alistair tried to dominate, our story, the one we were writing together, would always be stronger, brighter, and entirely ours. The theater smelled of polished wood, wax, and the lingering scent of fresh paint. I stood in the wings, heart steady but mind alert, watching every movement, every flicker of light, every shift in the set. Tonight was the culmination of months of preparation, our chance to finally secure the stage, the work, and the integrity Alistair had tried so desperately to corrupt. Gareth was already at the lighting console, his hands moving with fluid precision, adjusting cues as though each movement were a brushstroke on a living canvas. I moved to stand beside him, our shoulders brushing lightly, the contact sending a familiar thrill through me. It was subtle, quiet, yet it grounded me. "Everything's set," he murmured, eyes scanning the stage, then flicking to me. "We're ready for him, for whatever he throws at us." I nodded, inhaling deeply. "We are." The audience began to filter in, and I could sense Alistair's presence in the front row even before I saw him. He smiled, confident, as though he believed tonight would be his redemption. He had no idea how thoroughly we had prepared. Every flaw he had planned to exploit had already been neutralized, every contingency accounted for. The performance began, and it flowed like a symphony. Actors moved seamlessly, sets rotated flawlessly, and lights shifted perfectly with the rhythm of the story. Alistair's confidence faltered as he realized nothing was going wrong. Every attempt to interfere or manipulate was met with subtle, precise countermeasures orchestrated by Gareth and me. By the second act, I felt the tension between us, the unspoken current that had grown over months, stretched taut and exciting. Our hands brushed as we adjusted props and rigging, and this time, neither of us pulled away. The moment was brief, intimate, charged with the realization that we were more than collaborators. We were partners, in work and in life, slowly discovering the depth of our connection. During a brief blackout, I whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you." Gareth's hand found mine again, holding it firmly. "And I couldn't have done it without you," he replied. His gaze met mine, steady, unflinching, and in it I saw something deeper than admiration, something protective, tender, and real. The final act approached, and I felt the weight of anticipation settle in my chest. Alistair's presence was a shadow at the edge of my consciousness, but it was powerless now. We had anticipated, prepared, and outmaneuvered him at every turn. Tonight, he would see the full measure of our victory. The climax of the performance arrived, and I stood near the wings, watching every actor take their cue perfectly. The audience erupted in applause, a thunderous wave of recognition and approval. Alistair's face fell, the first real cracks showing in his carefully constructed veneer. He slumped back, pale, defeated, not because he had been humiliated, but because he had been outmatched in every way. After the curtain call, the theater emptied quickly, leaving only the echoes of celebration. Gareth and I lingered, standing in the center of the stage, the soft glow of the footlights casting long shadows. I felt a rare, profound satisfaction, not only in our triumph over Alistair, but in the quiet, undeniable bond that had grown between us. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "We did it," he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. "All of it. And you." I smiled, feeling the warmth spread through me. "We did it together," I corrected gently, letting my fingers intertwine with his. The intimacy was no longer subtle. It was quiet, solid, and mutual, forged in trust and shared purpose. Gareth leaned in slowly, and this time, there was no hesitation. Our lips met in a kiss that was neither rushed nor hesitant, but a culmination of months of tension, shared victories, and growing affection. It was a promise, a recognition that what we had built, professionally and personally, was unbreakable. The theater was silent except for the hum of the lights and the faint creak of the floorboards. I rested my forehead against his, breathing in his presence, and realized that for the first time in my life, the stage wasn't just a place of work or strategy. It was ours, fully and irrevocably. Alistair would never own this space. He would never touch the integrity, the artistry, or the connection we had forged. And in that truth, I found a rare peace, a quiet triumph, and the thrilling certainty that whatever came next, Gareth and I would face it together. The lights dimmed, leaving only the warm glow around us. And in that glow, I finally understood that the final bow, the true victory, was not just for the audience or the theater. It was for us. For integrity, for trust, for love. Our story, our stage, was complete.